With that, Albert Breer joins us, and he is joining us live. Let's touch on the Matt Stafford thing. So Matt Hasselbeck said, listen, when you get old, back injuries are a problem. You can overcome a lot. This thing looks, I mean, I know the Rams do a good job like the Patriots did to hide bad news. Like what's the feel around the league on Stafford and the Rams? Is it worse than they're letting on?
Well, I think there's like some teams that are looking at the Rams now with a little bit of an arched eyebrow based on all the things that you just said. As for the Rams themselves, the vibe I've gotten is that like whether it was 80, 85, 90%, like during training camp, like they just weren't going to push him out there until he was 100%. And they felt like because of all the damage he's taken over the course of his career, that there are only so many bullets left in the gun. They also felt like having Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster gave them a good amount of flexibility in that they could go and run their offense in practice without a hitch, while, again, saving those bullets that Matthew Stafford only has a limited amount of. So that's the approach that they've taken. Like they felt like the last couple of weeks, if we have a game tomorrow, he's playing, but it's not worth, it's not worth putting those miles on his body at this stage of training camp, at this stage of the summer.
Yeah.
And so I think they go forward now and ramping Matthew Stafford up for the season. Obviously, the setback a week ago wasn't great news, and it should have everybody's radar up. But Matthew's been through this before. He had the elbow, he had the wrist. Those were very troublesome injuries for a quarterback. This is a troublesome injury for any older player, and you just see if you can manage it over the course of the year.
So John Middlecoff said by naming Daniel Jones the starter, and Shane Steichen said it's not a short-term move. It's kind of like he's surrendered on Anthony Richardson. Like we gave it a run.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it feels like to me. What is your take on the move? It doesn't sound like it's just week 1 and 2. It's like the decision by the franchise.
Well, I think if they were going to build that in, Colin, what would have made more sense is you go to Anthony Richardson knowing you can go to Daniel Jones, right? Like if you go with Daniel Jones from the start, I think it's much harder to go back to Anthony Richardson based on all of the history there. And look, I think that one play, the play that he got hurt on, nobody wanted to see the result that the Colts got, right? Like, but that one play was sort of a microcosm of the problem with Anthony Richardson in that, like, the awareness, the ability to run the offense at a high level, it just hasn't been there with Anthony Richardson to the level where Shane Steichen wants it. And on that particular play, he should have been able to recognize what was in front of him. He should have been able to recognize he was hot. He should have gotten the ball out to the flat, and he did none of that, and he exposed himself to injury. He exposed his team to a loss of yardage, a loss of down, and that's the stuff that they've been trying to eliminate the entire offseason. It's actually interesting. If you look at the Colts last year, right, they were 29th in total defense, and they were 30th in giveaways. And they felt like if they could clean those two things up, because they won 8 games despite all of that, they could have a playoff team this year. So they bring in Lou Anarumo to change the face of the defense. They spend on defense. They went out and got Charvarius Ward and Cam Bynum to help their secondary. And then on offense, the idea is we got to be way better at taking care of the ball than we were in 2024. And so I think they feel like Daniel Jones, his ability to operate the offense, his ability to protect the ball, was just at a higher level right now than Anthony Richardson. And there are jobs on the line there this year. So they felt like for the team they have right now, Daniel Jones was the better answer.
So, I mean, you've been to 23 training camps. What was the and I assume the Bears were one of was the Bears one of those camps? Okay.
Yep, the Bears were one of them.
It's so interesting. You probably went from quiet, pensive Green Bay down to the circus in Chicago by a 40-minute train ride. What was the Bears camp like?
I think there's I would say just a lot of curiosity about where Ben Johnson was going to have that offense. And I think for a lot of people coming in, if you didn't know what Ben Johnson's plan was, you would look at it and be like, holy crap, like this does not look the way that it's supposed to look. And to be fair, like the day I was there, Caleb Williams looked terrible. There's no sugarcoating it. I mean, the first ball he threw was a throwaway that landed 5 yards in bounds. A couple plays after that, he threw it out to the flat. No one was home. So then you ask around about, what their plan is and what they're trying to accomplish. And what Ben Johnson and his staff were trying to do with Caleb was let's feed him through a fire hose in the spring and then early in training camp. And let's see what he can handle. And let's see what he's good at. And let's see what he's not good at. And let's see how he learns. Let's see how he takes those early lumps and is able to compartmentalize them. And then over the course of camp, the hope was that they would get a more resilient player who's playing faster. And as coaches, they would get a better idea of what he was best at so they could build an offense based on that. And I think you saw the result of some of that on Sunday night. Now, look, Buffalo wasn't doing a lot defensively. They had their backups out there. So it has to be tempered. But I think what you saw was a Caleb Williams we really haven't seen, maybe even going back to college, where he's playing fast, he's playing on time, the ball is out, the plays are run in a fashion where everything looks coherent. They know he can put on the cape and be Superman. The idea is, like, how do you balance that with running an actual NFL offense? And it's a process getting a player like Caleb there. And I think the evidence we saw, especially with some of those throws to the tight ends, to Loveland and to Kmet down the seam, I think would indicate that Caleb's playing a lot faster than he was last year.
So I think sometimes you go into a season and you know you're not a Super Bowl team, but you have to figure things out before next year's free agency, the trading deadline, and the draft. So I have argued you can start Russell Wilson, but I want to know by Thanksgiving, can Jaxson Dart handle cold weather? Can he go on the road and win? He had 3 years of Lane Kiffin. So don't tell me he's not ready to play. 3 years of Lane Kiffin in a camp with Brian Daboll, that's hard coaching. I would play Jaxson Dart pretty early from what you've been around the Giants. Is quarterback one set in stone? Because next year's draft, I mean, you start looking at it.
Yeah.
There is. I did last night. There are like 4 quarterbacks that could go top 10, 12 picks.
Nussmeier, Aller, Sellers,
Arch potentially.
Yeah.
You know, so what is the kind of quiet, covert game plan at quarterback for New York?
So Jaxson Dart has checked every box, and everything that they thought they would have with him has come to fruition. And so everything they put in front of him, he's handled. He's also shown a certain presence and moxie for the position that you hear about, but you don't really know till you have him in the building. And they had a lot of close connections to Ole Miss, right? Like the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss is Charlie Weiss Jr., and who's Brian Daboll's mentor is Charlie Weiss Sr. So Joe Judge is on that staff. Obviously, still a lot of people in the Giants building still know Joe Judge, you know. So there's a lot of connections there. That part of it's checked out as well. So I think what we're seeing here in the preseason is a manifestation of what they're seeing in camp, which I don't think changes their week 1 plan. But I think it does mean the leash is a little shorter on Russell Wilson. In other words, it was, do we redshirt him? Is he ready to play? Now he looks a little more ready to play. If we're 0-3, if we're 1-4, do we start to look at our options? I think that's where you put yourself right now. If Russell Wilson goes out and wins games and plays great, and they win 11 or 12 games this year and gets to the playoffs, then maybe you don't see Jaxson Dart. I just think there's going to be a little less patience if the Giants stub their toe now because of what they know, because of what they have in the bullpen.
So Joe Burrow said yesterday, listen, we tend to sign our guys right before the season. Once again, Burrow being reasonably honest, which I appreciate. Is there a team lurking out there that you wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear in 10 days, we have a major deal and the Bengals get 4 picks for Trey Hendrickson? I mean, that's the kind of thing where Cincinnati would go, oh, good, inexpensive players draft. I mean, their defense is atrocious without Hendrickson. But is there a team that you think is kind of sniffing a little bit? And I mean, I always look at Philadelphia, but I don't think they need him.
Yeah.
Is there a team out there?
I'd be surprised. I say that with all due respect to Trey Hendrickson as a player. And I think this becoming news over the last few days is probably a little bit of an acknowledgement of that from the player's side in wanting to try to provoke something to happen here, some sort of offer to come across here. I think the amount that Cincinnati is asking for, in addition to the contract, is part of the problem, right? It's a pick. It's a really good defensive player. And then, of course, you've got to, give him the contract. And here's the thing, Colin. If I'm another team, right, like let's say I'm a contending team, because you would assume only contending teams are going to bring in a player of this age. If I'm a contending team and Cincinnati asks me for a premium draft pick, which is going to be a young player on your roster next year, and a really useful defensive player this year. So now you're taking that player out of your defense and adding Trey Hendrickson. And now you're paying a guy who's 31 years old, whatever it is, 35, 36, 37, 38, $39 million a year. Like, is that worth that? You know what I mean? Like, is it? So in other words, is Hendrickson going to be that much better than the player you're taking out of the equation to take on the contract and the age? And I just think it's really hard to thread that needle when you're talking about finding a trade partner here. And the Bengals view themselves as a very real contender, and rightfully so. And so, they're looking at it as, well, like, the picks are nice, but the picks aren't going to help us this year. We need something that's going to help us this year. So I don't know how much they're going to move off the idea that they want a really good veteran defensive player out of this too. So it's hard for me to see where all of those pieces come together.
Well, I don't have the camps you went to in front of me, but I know that Cleveland sounds like you went there because you could sneak a day over in Columbus and check out
twice.
I bet you did. Columbus is right around the corner. You got a little sneak peek at your alma mater. So, I mean, listen, I'm not watching film. Flacco's my starter. I'd move Kenny Pickett. I've said this for months, and then let the two guys stay on the roster. It's starting to feel like Tebow. Like it's getting into the, and I've said this, nobody wants a celebrity backup quarterback. Nobody in this league wants it. People will deal with a young celebrity star quarterback if he's really talented. There's a story today. They may keep all four quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Well, really? What do you make of that?
I think it's going to happen. Wow. Yeah. I mean, and you're right, Colin. Like, I think a big piece of this, and we went over this with Colin Kaepernick, with Tim Tebow, and a number of other quarterbacks saw their careers end a little prematurely. I think like Cam Newton's in that category, Jay Cutler's in that category, because it was hard for people to envision them as backup quarterbacks. Coaches want their backup quarterbacks to blend in with the furniture, to be a resource to the starter. So obviously, like, having a fifth round rookie that has a celebrity that Shedeur has flies in the face of all of that. I think right now, what Kevin Stefanski is trying to do is he's trying to serve the roster that he has right now. Have you looked at the first 6 games on their schedule, Colin?
I can look it up. Is it rough?
It looks like 0-6 is staring you in the face, right? Like, so you look at that schedule, and then how are you going to look guys like Myles Garrett, like Denzel Ward, like Joel Bitonio in the face if you're not giving them the very best answer you can at the quarterback position? Like, you can't, if you're Kevin Stefanski, go into the season with somebody who's far lesser than the best player on your roster at the most important position on the field. And I think that's what Joe Flacco is right now. Joe Flacco gives them the best answer right now. I think if you look at the way they set up the quarterback competition over the course of the summer, they felt like coming out of the spring, Kenny Pickett was really the only one who had a chance to challenge him. And so you go into the season, you have the 6-game stretch with Joe Flacco as your quarterback. You have the bye a couple weeks after that. And so, like, then I think maybe you reassess if things have gone off the rails. Because, again, like, looking out into your locker room at the beginning of the year and giving them a rookie quarterback who the locker room isn't quite sure can play instead of Joe Flacco, that's a really tough look for a coach. Now, if you get to 1-7 or you're 3-8 or you're 4-9, that's a different deal altogether. At that point, like, players know the score, but for the here and the now, the idea is to give them the best answer to win right now. And a guy who's going to give them the best chance to succeed individually and as a team, and very clearly that's been Joe Flacco.
All right. It's funny. We took this morning, I took the Bears schedule, and I said, I'm going to be optimistic. I'll give you a split. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a split, which they never do. They were 1-5 in division last year. I'll give you a split with Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit. I'm going to give you the go either way games like the Giants at home, Steelers at home. I'm going to give you all those. I'm going to give you wins in Las Vegas. I thought I was incredibly optimistic. I mean, they don't split their division very often. They went 1-5 last year. They're a home dog to Minnesota in week 1. And I went through every game. And then I took a bunch of games. Like I said, listen, you're not winning at Baltimore. You're not winning in San Francisco. You're not winning probably in Philadelphia. I had a few not winning. And I got to 9-8. And I thought that was really optimistic. If you look at that schedule, and that's why I said, happiness is connected to expectations. If 9-8 and Caleb Williams, you got the right coach and the right quarterback. Take it now. You look at this schedule. I mean, there's some non-winnable games here. At Philly, at Baltimore, at Green Bay, at San Francisco. Those are tough games for a rookie coach. What do you see when you look at the Bears?
Well, it's indicative of the division in general. Like last year, you had a 15-win division champion and a 14-win wild card. I don't know if that's going to happen again with the draw that the division got in general. And the Bears obviously are in the midst of that. And you would think with the strength of the division just on its own in a vacuum, with the Vikings and the Lions and the Packers all coming back as playoff teams, there's a chance that they cannibalize each other to begin with, which is going to, I think, look, all four of them aren't making the playoffs, based on the schedule and based on the balance in the division. So, I think what's fair to look at for the Bears is, are they ascending at the end of the year? Did the offensive line come together? They spent a lot of resources in bringing in Joe Thuney and Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson. How does the defense look like? How does the defense look under Dennis Allen? Obviously, that was a strength under Matt Eberflus. And you hit the biggest one, which is Caleb Williams ascending going into year 3. If the Bears are at 7 wins, 8 wins, 9 wins, and Ben Johnson is starting to show signs of being the mastermind that he was in Detroit, and you're going to be able to watch and see some of the schematic stuff they're doing. Is that stuff starting to show up? And is Caleb getting the ball out on time? And is he putting the Superman cape on when he needs to put the Superman cape on and not at other times, right? You start to see a combination of those things at the end of the year. And I think you can be really happy with the season. I don't view the Bears as this sort of team that where it's okay, well, if they don't make the playoffs, then we need to take a really hard look at things. But based on the makeup of their roster and where they've invested, I do look at it that should be a team that's ascending at the end of the year.
Albert Breer, 23 camps, as good as anybody that does this. Good seeing you, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Colin.
You bet. Great stuff. Great information today.